Number 6, Barack Obama raised the hopes of a generation of young votes with his 208 run for presidency. Some have been disappointed with what he has been able to accomplish on their behalf, and have now joined the ranks of those already disillusioned by the American political process. Frustrated with the lesser of the two evils, choice divided in this year, presidential campaign, at least one organization in New York City is encouraging Black people to vote in Reparations Now.
To write in
Reparations Now as their vote for U.S. President in 2016. What do you think of this idea?
And I love the idea of writing in reparations now or anything, Bugs, but whatever you want to write. But if your voting booth is an electronic thing, you can't write in nothing. Because I remember the last election of the local one. I wanted to write in something. You could not pick the guy. You could not pick the guy they had on there.
Oh, really?
You had to pick him. I'm like, what kind of shit is this going on here? So it just speaks to, and I'm a techie person. So I was like, when they talked about electronic voting, I'm like, yeah, I can vote from home. That would be great. Right. No, they have rigged it so
really
it's always in their favor. It's always in their favor.
Okay. But so this question 6 about disillusionment with the political process and how we feel about this idea of writing in reparations now, for those of us that don't believe any real choice is offered by the current spate of candidates, or that is ever really offered between the two major parties. I don't know. I mean, I am struggling with it myself. I've been to a number of community meetings where that tactic has been discussed, and I haven't decided what I'm going to do. I'm not thrilled with Hillary at all. I'm not thrilled with Bernie either. I hear the argument that if neither one of them is elected or electable, then we're looking at the Donald.
Oh.
And that ain't cute at all. But I never think the choices are good, but I do think that this year the choices are especially slim pickings. So,
500 years.
But the idea of writing in reparations now, I believe deeply that Black people deserve reparations and that we should be doing everything that we can to fight about it. Recognizing that Congressman John Conyers has been introducing a bill for more than 40 years.
Yes.
Just to study the idea of reparations. And he has not been able to succeed in getting that much accomplished. But I definitely think it's an issue that deserves the time and attention and advocacy of a large number of people. But I know that we're not there. And so what does it mean to write in something like that as your vote? What does it mean to vote for a candidate, any candidate, that is not going to be responsive to your needs. You know, I'm concerned about the young people that have been sort of turned off because Barack was not able to deliver the world to them. I don't know why he promised the world in the first place. He was trying to get elected, you know, so he told people what they wanted to hear. He probably didn't realize either they were going to actually believe him, you know, but they did, and so now they're really, really disappointed. And so that concerns me. It concerns me that Black people and women, but Black people in particular, have put so much of ourselves into gaining and keeping the right to vote, and that we're now pretty much, so many of us just don't vote, period, because of the disillusionment. But I don't know. I think we really ought to be thinking about what to do with that. You know, my bachelor's is in political science, so I have always felt that there are a lot of other things you can do besides vote, but they require a lot more energy, a lot more organization, a lot more commitment than we are accustomed to devoting to the political process. But if you think of models, like the Contract on America, and I think I've mentioned this before, but remember the Contract on America from the late 90s, Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton, where, you know, they really went down the list. They really went down the list and said, what is it that people need to make their lives good? And said, okay, snatch that!
Okay.
What is it that people need to be healthy and strong? Okay, snatch that! But if you look at the contract, it really is this comprehensive plan of virtually every area of American life. And so for me, it's a model on the one hand of what we don't do. What we don't do is put together this plan and say, these are the things that we want, and then we fight. We fight like ALEC, state by state, legislature by legislature, for everything on this list of demands. So that's one kind of model. The other kind of model is what the Tea Party has done. You know, door to door, home to home, give me a cup of tea, and let's talk about what we're going to do. You know, but that is a level of commitment that is a couple of cuts above going to the voting booth every 4 years and pulling the lever. And so I don't know how we get to a place where we have the conversation about how, like these 40,000 women in the Black women in 1900s who were doing exactly that kind of thing, door to door. So yeah, I understand the disillusionment, but I also understand quite a bit about what we're not doing, not only as Black people, but as Americans, because most Americans don't vote either, you know. And so to me, it kind of doesn't add up to say, oh, the system is corrupt, oh, nothing can be done about it, when we haven't really even tried ABC through XYZ. Um, so
Hmm.
that's my speech on that.
Okay. Well, Michelle, do you think um, it could be because we don't have in our communities, well, first of all, we don't think of ourselves as one community. We're very separated.
Hmm.
And then in the time frame of this book, the chapter that we're in, there were lynchings, and that danger that Kim was talking about was on the doorstep. These women had shotguns, and they had to have them. And I think the last meeting we had where Joel took part, he was telling a story about his mother walking to work with a 38 in her purse just to work at the factory,
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
keep. So maybe if we don't consider, because that danger is not on your doorstep, it could be, and be more empathetic to the other people who are facing these dangers. Maybe we could move together like that, but first we have to get empathetic. Maybe that's our
Yeah,
problem.
yeah. I mean, we don't have the same sense of immediacy that they had back then. Um, but that's only because the the optics of the game have changed, but the substance has not changed. And we're affected so deeply by the political process. When we talk about mass incarceration, for example, that's us.
Yes.
Or we talk about entitlement programs. So many of us are dependent on that on
Mhm.
those kinds of programs. There's so many ways. There's so many of us that are in the military. There's so many
Yeah.
ways that we are directly impacted by what government does at all levels. And so it's hard for me to understand really why we don't feel the immediacy, why we don't make the direct connections. Or as we've been talking about here tonight, the food that we eat. That's
Yeah.
everybody. Why
Yeah.
wouldn't we care? Why wouldn't we care?
You're right.
The
Hmm.
air we breathe. Why wouldn't we care about that? So I know it's a very complicated answer as to how people have become so disengaged, so disillusioned. But it's like we're having a tantrum, and I guess that's kind of how I feel about the reparations now. It's like having a tantrum. Well, I've had tantrums. I practically killed myself because I was having a tantrum. It didn't solve a problem, but I guess I felt better because I had a tantrum. So what I'm trying to ask is, so okay, I get why we've gotten so disillusioned, but how do we move out of the tantrum phase into an actual proactive position? Well, yeah, and that's the question two. Um, Question two is, one New York City organization is encouraging Black people to write in Reparations Now as their vote for U.S. president in 2016. What do you think of this idea? And I have not decided what I think of the idea, but I do understand and appreciate where this particular group of people is coming from. And, you know, basically, they're coming from a place of, you know, we never have more than the lesser of two evils to choose from. And how do we break that paradigm? How do we do something different that will get us to start to think about what we really want and what we really need to go about getting it? So, do either anybody here have a reaction to that idea, writing in reparations now?
I had to go ahead, Sheree. I defer.
You just hit a chord when you talk about reparations. People have been talking about reparations, you know, from time immemorial, it seems like, and I've been around that movement myself personally. When some organizations I had been affiliated with were dealing, they were talking. That was on the agenda. Reparations was on the agenda, but you know, it sounds good, but look, when you go back to who was it that said, was it Du Bois or was it somebody else of note that said power concedes only the power, power concedes only the power, and that is true. That's the truth. If anybody denies that, they're not living in reality. So if you don't have the power to twist some arms in some kind of way, if it's not, look, if it's not militarily, and certainly it's not going to be militarily, all right, because you know we're not crazy, and okay, it's not going to be militarily, all right. You know, people be talking all that fly stuff about this and that, and we know that's crazy, okay, because it ain't reality, okay. You do what you can do. You carry the load you're capable of carrying. If you do anything beyond that, that's not very wise, and it's counterproductive. You don't achieve anything in terms of what you wanted to achieve. In fact, it'll cost you to go back even further than you was when you began that insane kind of a quest that had no kind of rhyme or reason to it. And we often get caught up in rhetoric and in what we want to be, as opposed to what we're capable of, and what realistically we will be in reference to the society that we're dealing with on an everyday 24/7 basis. Reparations, look, if you look into the dollars and cents of what reparations would cost, based on the crimes that were committed. When you talk about crimes of humanity,
but just, you know, to fairly represent what the organization is talking about, they're not imagining that reparations is going to be granted as a result of people writing it in on their ballot. What they're really trying to do is to get us to think about this from a different angle, to open another window. So. Okay. From that perspective, what do you think, Shareef?
And so, well, I haven't come up off the top of my head with a different angle in terms of how to approach reparations, other than
it's not the issue of approaching reparations. It's the issue of our continuing and unquestioned loyalty to the Democratic Party that does not seem to ever feel a need to give back.
Was that in the framework of the argument of the conversation before I came in about the Democratic Party? Was that part of the framework of the conversation?
Well, it's a part of the framework of question 2 on the agenda.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point about the Democratic Party, because you know, black folk in America have been very loyal to the Democratic Party for as long as I can remember, as opposed to the Republican Party. Even though there was a time where you had Southern Democrats that were just as raw and nasty as the Tea Party people today, maybe more so back in the day. You know, you had Southern Democrats; they weren't Republicans. You know, you have a different setup now with the Tea Party thing, and the Republican Party has split up, and they even say stuff like you have some notable broadcasters say, news people say, Ronald Reagan, who was like the deity of the Republican Party, like they light a candle for him or whatever. It's like they said he wouldn't be Republican enough for the Tea Party people. He would not be conservative enough. He would not be conservative enough. They would conscrew. They would interpret the things that he had done as caving in or being weak on certain issues that they. And that's one of the insane things about that mentality, because in any political arena, a social political arena, it has to be give and take. You have to have compromise. It's just like any relationship. If a branch is rigid, it's going to break. It has to have some sway. That's why the Creator had the wisdom to make the trees where they move with the wind. Even when they build skyscrapers, the skyscrapers have some give, and they move a little bit. If skyscrapers didn't move, they would snap. They would break like twigs. So that's just an analogy. I mean, it's you have to have give and take. And when you have this staunch kind of, if anybody stands on something like so staunch, there's no wiggle room. There's no room for discussion. That means there's no dialogue. And if there's no dialogue, there's not going to be any progress in terms of any resemblance of common ground. You won't achieve common ground. That being said, about reparations, if reparation is just a rallying cry, when in reality we know that. I hate to say it, people don't want me to say this. I mean, perhaps, but it seems unachievable to me in the reality of the time that we're living in and what we face in terms of the power structure. And one of the things that exacerbate the problem with so many movements, and here's another thing: you don't even really have movements now in the communities of color, real movements. Like there used to be something that at least had structurally. No, you used to have some kind of movements. When they allude to the civil rights movement, for instance, that wasn't a panacea. They had a lot of things they had to work on. I mean, they had problems, and there was a lot of infighting, and even then, during the time of Martin, during the time of Malcolm, who were contemporaries, and Adam Clayton Powell was on the set, and people like that. Some very dynamic people. Let's put it this way: you don't even got nobody near those kind of dynamic figures now that I can think of on the horizon that had the potential to be leaders and were sincere and ready to give it all up for the people, not just preach that,
Right.